Recent polls show 76% of those surveyed say Chicago would be better off with a different mayor. How do you convince them otherwise?
Well, look, the people of Chicago elected me to invest in people. In every single category as it relates to investments, they're up. I actually am humbled that the people of Chicago believe in my administration enough to have greater expectations than any other administration. That's what leadership looks like, and I'm humbled to do it.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that there's greater expectations? I don't know where I hear that. Because, and then the feedback instead is that the polling is poor. So I don't know how you interpret it that way.
Well, because maybe because I'm a middle child. Maybe it's because I'm a Bears fan. By the way, the Bears are undefeated in 2025, so we're off to a great start. Here's what I'm saying, though. Look, the people of Chicago voted for me to invest in them, and that's exactly what we've done. And I'm going to continue to do that.
Earlier, in 2023, you were elected a little over 52% of the vote in the mayoral race. But in the most recent poll of Chicago voters, that you had a 14% approval rating with a 70% disapproval rating. I know you mentioned that there's a lot of numbers that you care about and that you were pointing to things that you are talking about doing for the city, but in a democracy, what really matters is how the voters perceive your administration's work. So why are you so unpopular?
Well, I mean, look, fortunately for me, that I'm not moved by polls. They're a snapshot at a point of time. Like, people have their expression and opinion of whether or not, we should hire more young people. People have an opinion on whether or not we should open up mental health clinics. Clearly, people have an opinion on whether or not we should, stay to international and national law. People have those opinions, and, I can say this emphatically. I was elected to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago. And I will stop at nothing to ensure that happens.
Controversy over Mayor Brandon Johnson's status with the Chicago Teachers Union has taken a new turn. Ethical questions persist about the mayor's role in ongoing CTU contract talks. And now the city's Board of Ethics is weighing in, denying that their office ever advised the mayor on the issue. Political reporter Marianne Ahern is here now with more. Marianne?
Alex, the mayor says he's a member on leave from CTU, which means potentially he may benefit from the very contract the city is now negotiating.
This was my first question to Mayor Johnson earlier this week. Let's start with a yes or no question. Is it proper to negotiate a CTU contract if, as a member on leave, you are going to benefit from that contract?
Well, I'm not going to benefit from the contract.
Officially, he has not resigned from CTU.
So I am on leave from Chicago Public Schools, but I'm not negotiating a contract. The Board of Education has that responsibility.
But with elected school board members joining next week, the mayor still appoints the majority of the school board. While the mayor's team suggested they were advised there were no ethical concerns, Steve Berlin, the executive director of the City Board of Ethics, denies he was ever asked for advice on the mayor's union status. Berlin tells NBC5, quote, the Board of Ethics was not asked about on-leave arrangements with the CTU or CPS under the city's governmental ethics ordinance and has issued no opinions addressing this issue. William Quinlan is CPS CEO Pedro Martinez's attorney.
If he is on leave with the Chicago Teachers Union and has a relationship with the Chicago Teachers Union, he's on one side of the table and Chicago Public Schools is on the other.
Shortly after the mayor took office in June of 2023, Ben Felton, the CPS chief talent officer, said in a memo about the mayor's CTU status, he was, quote, concerned that could be a potential conflict of interest for the mayor to be an employee of an organization that he was overseeing.
Because at the end of the day, what we all want, as good public servants, what anyone wants is the best deal here.
David Greising with the Better Government Association.
The question for the mayor is, why do you need to maintain that status? How do you benefit? How does the city benefit?
Mayor Brandon Johnson had a lot to say during our 15-minute interview today, but time after time he refused to answer the question itself, which a watchdog group says raises questions about accountability. Today, Governor Pritzker also criticizing the mayor over communication shortcomings. Mayor Brandon Johnson just off a brutal battle over his budget, now with the pressing problem of the new contract for the Chicago Teachers Union.
The people of Chicago have voted for me, and they have entrusted me to fight for public education, to ensure that every single child from one end of the city to the other end has everything that they need, and that's what we're going to secure in our public schools.
So how do you pay for the CTU contract?
Well, look, this is not just simply about a contract. This is about a vision for public education.
But when that vision included pushing CPS CEO Pedro Martinez to take out a $300 million high-interest loan to pay for the teacher's contract, Martinez balked. The entire school board then resigned, allowing Johnson to appoint new members who fired Martinez. He sued in court and remained CEO for 6 months per his contract. Do you still support taking out the high-interest loan to make this contract happen?
So here's what I support. A fully funded education system.
Yeah, but we're talking about how you're going to pay for it. Do you support taking out this
I support a fully funded education system.
Mayor, if he could avoid a property tax hike this year, he rattled off what he's funded this year instead.
These are all critical investments that we've made without laying people off, as well as furloughs.
But I asked you about a
now
property
we have
tax.
to continue to fight for progressive revenue.
He had his talking points, which likely were scripted in his mind before he sat down for the interview, but he wasn't responding to very specific questions that came from you as a proxy for the general public that is likely asking very much the same questions.
Governor J.B. Pritzker also with strong words today for Mayor Johnson, suggesting a strained relationship with Springfield. The governor saying he's only heard from Johnson perhaps 5 times since he's been mayor.
They don't reach out very often, and it seems like they don't have good relationships in Springfield, in part because they don't do the outreach that's necessary.
This afternoon, the mayor's office responded saying their recollection is different than the governor's about their relationship. Kennedy Bartley, the chief external affairs officer, adding they don't want to get into a back and forth and politicize the issue. Instead, she said they're focusing on collaborating with lawmakers and the governor in the spring legislative session. We'll see how that goes.
Mr. Mayor, 2 Illinois state legislators have introduced a bill calling for a speed up of the recall process. Can you tell us what you make of that, and if you think projects like this one speak to anything about your relationship with Springfield, with Washington, and the ability to carry forward?
Well, look, as far as, people introducing legislation, that's their job to do that. I remember when I first started working for State Senator Don Harmon, there was a piece of legislation to declare popcorn to be the state snack. It won, by the way, and it passed unanimously. Look, I know one of the individuals. He's a true champion, a West Sider, Representative LaShawn Ford. Grateful for his leadership in Springfield that allowed us to continue a conversation in the 104th General Assembly to have substantive conversations around how the city of Chicago can participate as a whole in all discussions. As far as my relationships, again, my first job, my political start was with State Senator Don Harmon. In fact, I met Robin Kelly when she was a state rep because I was the chief of staff to State Representative, former alderperson Deborah Graham. Senator Collins and I were on the front line along Michigan Avenue protesting against the Emanuel administration for covering up the video of the brutal killing of Laquan McDonald. Speaker Welch and I supported Speaker Welch when he was running for state rep, and the other speaker went with the other guy. So those relationships go further than my time as mayor. We've watched our children grow up together, and I'm looking forward to the continued work that we will do.
We reported Governor Pritzker vented yesterday about Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson.
The governor expressing frustration after the mayor urged lawmakers to block a bill in Springfield that Pritzker wanted to see passed. Mayor Johnson responded for the second time in 2 days to Governor Pritzker's remarks, and Terrence has the very latest.
Dawn, today the drama between Illinois' top 2 Democrats continue. Pritzker wanted to pass a bill regulating hemp products, including Delta 8. The governor claimed neither Johnson nor his office warned him before the bill was killed. Pritzker said he and the mayor have spoken 5 times. Now today, Mayor Johnson said he does work with the governor, and in fact gave 2 examples of successful collaboration.
We've had a strong working relationship that allowed us to pull off one of the most, if not the most, memorable Democratic National Convention in the history. We responded collectively when the governor of Texas used human beings to attack our state.
There is a new move to recall Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. The first attempt, you may remember, came from a Chicago resident, an average citizen. But this next one comes from Springfield. NBC5's Chela Bachahusky got the mayor's reaction to this today.
As he joined a cavalcade of public officials welcoming a $1.9 billion federal investment in the CTA's Red Line extension, Mayor Brandon Johnson brushed off what have been increasing calls for him to be recalled.
As far as, people introducing legislation, that's their job to do that.
Late Thursday night, Representatives Anthony DeLuca and LaShawn Ford introduced HB 1084, calling for a clear and effective process to conduct recall elections in cities like Chicago.
People are asking for it. It's not something that I thought of myself. It's something that constituents asked for in 2015 after the Laquan McDonald's tape was released.
At the time, Ford's bill, which he has introduced every year since, was aimed at Mayor Rahm Emanuel. There is already a grassroots effort underway to collect the more than 56,000 signatures necessary to force a recall. The man behind that movement is Dan Bolin.
Every day that the mayor is in office is a master class in why a Chicago mayoral recall mechanism is needed.
The mayor's office is still reeling after questions were raised about his status as an on-leave member of the Chicago Teachers Union and his involvement in contract talks, as well as criticism from the governor's office about his relationship with Springfield.
The good thing about the work that we do in the city of Chicago, a perception of one individual doesn't define the entire city of Chicago. I will say this, though, the city of Chicago has gotten better, stronger, and safer. You're absolutely right about the intentions of Governor Abbott. He is attacking democratically ran cities, and particularly cities that are being led by black leaders or leaders of color. This is unconscionable. And it's a very raggedy approach. And quite frankly, not only is it reckless and raggedy, but it is evil-spirited. Also not lost on me, I think there were 38,000 Republicans that showed up and voted for Donald Trump or something like that in Chicago. So since if we're trying to draw some conclusions and you all want some other, analytics you might want to discover, that might be something to look into, because I'll just say it, there's a good chance that played a part in this referendum. So the same people who want to see Donald Trump to become president, sometimes I do feel like he wants my job, but who wants to be president again, those are the same voters who voted for him, and the same voters where you look at where there were more no's, they were concentrated there.
Seniors like Constant Hatchett don't know what to do now that more Walgreens locations will be closing down.
It's a bad issue. It's bad. We need Walgreens. We need it because our medicine, we're seniors.
The second largest pharmacy store chain in the U.S. announced it's closing 5 stores by the end of February in neighborhoods on the city's south and west sides.
Walgreens they're still trying to make their money, but they don't want to do it in the black and brown community.
In an emailed statement, a spokesperson for Walgreens says the most recent closures are a part of a previously announced business strategy calling for the shuttering of 1,200 locations over 3 years, adding in part, increased regulatory and reimbursement pressures are weighing on our ability to cover the cost associated with rent, staffing, and supply needs. It's never an easy decision to close a store.
Is disappearing.
While at an unrelated event advocating for affordable housing for seniors, community activist Reverend Robin Hood says the closures will be a devastating blow for those already struggling to get their medications.
And Walgreens is wrong for coming in this community all these years and then closing it up.
After seeing several drugstores close in recent years, Del Car drugstore owner Edwin Muldrow, whose father opened in 1960 what is now the only black-owned drugstore left in Chicago, says when corporate pharmacy chains abandon communities, they leave behind pharmacy deserts.
So when you take the prescription services out of the community, where are the seniors going to go and purchase food, purchase basic healthcare items?
No suburban locations are included in this planned closure.